It's been another month since we last reviewed this Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus. And since then, we have seen a new competitor emerge from the upper mid-range tier of phones, specifically the Poco F5 series. But today, I want to share my experience with this phone for the past 2 months. So as soon as I was done with the Poco F5, I switched and daily driven this phone, which was somewhat good timing since both devices are going up against each other in pricing. So last time, we didn't have the official price of the Note 12 Pro Plus, well at least in the Philippines. Now we have an answer. It's 21,999 pesos for the sole model with 8GB RAM and 256GB storage. And it's the most expensive, sitting at the top, upper mid-range phone from Redmi by Xiaomi. So it's going up against the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G and even Poco's newly announced F5. But the main selling factors of the Note 12 Pro Plus are the 120W charging and 200MP camera. Okay, so for the past month, I was taking more photos than videos to see the pros and cons of this 200MP camera. I mostly shot in default photo mode, which bins the photos into 12.5MP photos simply because I have no use for full 200MP photos. Although it's nice to have a full 200MP photo for the best detailed photos, it's not exactly the one solution to all problems. You lose the great low light capability of the sensor in exchange for better sharpness. So if you really want to capture something in full 200MP, make sure it's a sunny day or the lighting condition is strong or nearly perfect. If you do want to get better details than a regular 12.5MP photo in controlled lighting environments, the 50MP lets you do that. So it's the middle ground, the best of both worlds when it comes to preserving the details with less noise. But if you do want just the right amount of details with the least amount of noise in the image, then you should stick to the regular photo mode. Because most of the time, the detail you get is more than enough, especially if you're capturing subjects that are close to the frame. You even get that natural subject separation or bokeh effect that can make an image stand out from the rest. But like any other huge camera sensor, there's some fringing at a very close distance, so make sure you put a bit of distance if you want an entire subject to be sharp and focused. And I also noticed the autofocus prioritizing the background instead of the main subject in the middle of the frame. The main camera is sharp enough for me to not be bothered cropping into 2x in regular photo mode, although the images you get are on the over-sharpened side. It's not noticeable when viewing them on a small screen like your phone. As for the dynamic range, it's fairly limited. Most of the time, you won't be able to see the details in both the highlights and the shadows. This could be fixed with a simple toggle in the camera, except you don't have that option anymore. So the camera app decides when to use HDR. And during my testing, I tried my best for the camera to activate HDR, pointing it towards the sun, basically any overly dark or overly bright subjects, and 2 out of 5 times, it wouldn't activate. So expect your photos to be detailed and all, but the shadows and highlights to be no more, if that makes sense. As for the software processing or algorithm of Xiaomi when it comes to cameras, it still loves to brighten up the image than normal. I guess it's alright at this point since they don't ruin the image that much, except for the highlights of course, but what I specifically hate is the painting effect on images that's pronounced on skin tones. Xiaomi is simply aggressive in eliminating noise at the expense of detail. No matter how greatly lit a person's face is, you'll end up with smoothened skin tones. No wonder why many fans of Xiaomi phones are adamant about installing Gcam mods that output HDR pixel-like portraits. Personally, I'm not as big of a fan of Gcam now as I was then. The processing and the quality of the image are there, but 90% of the time, the app experience itself is laggy and stuttery. And that's something I don't want to deal with as I get older. As impressive as the hardware sounds, in the world of smartphone photography, hardware is half of the story, while the other half is software. And clearly, Xiaomi has to do more on the software side. Don't get me wrong, I think the photos you get here are great for the price, but some weird decision making was done here, like the lack of manual HDR. But what really stands out, at least for me, is the design. And I'm not talking about the white finish under the glossy glass back or the plastic frame. I'm talking about the half of this phone. I am definitely used to thin phones by now because I can't stop noticing the half of this phone whenever I pick it up. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, but it's hard not to notice when you're coming from a thinner or lighter device. But if having a hefty phone means a bigger battery, then I'm all for it. With a 5000 mAh battery, the Note 12 Pro Plus has been a solid 1 day to 1.5 day phone for me, and that includes 2 hours of gaming already. And yes, that 120-watt charger will spoil anyone, including me. Do you know the other thing that spoiled me? The display. I think it has everything you need and more. A fast 120Hz screen, and a spacious and colorful AMOLED display for content consumption and gaming. These features have distracted me enough to forget the ever so slightly thicker chin bezel. And for those who watch a lot of quality videos on their phones, I've watched Bullet Train on Netflix with Dolby Vision and Dolby Audio, and it was great. HDR looked accurate and bright enough to make the movie watchable under shade on a bright sunny day. The only thing I wish was better here is auto brightness. In low ambient lighting, I found the phone putting the screen brightness a little too low for my liking. As far as performance goes, the Dimensity 1080 chip in here has enough CPU and GPU power to support most users' needs. Now, if you are a gamer and you want smooth 50 to 60 FPS gaming from high-end titles like Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail, you're definitely better off looking at Poco F5. However, it doesn't mean that this phone isn't capable of supporting and playing those games. I've been playing a lot of Star Rail recently and found the sweetest spot for 30 to 40 FPS gaming in medium settings with anti-aliasing turned off. If this was Genshin Impact, the gaming experience might have been playable at best given it requires active inputs from the user, but with Star Rail, which is a turn-based exploration type of game, getting that high FPS doesn't matter as much. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that you can play popular games like Mobile Legends and Call of Duty Mobile consistently at 60 frames, but with AAA titles, they are playable, but you do need to play around with graphical settings for a better experience. Day-to-day tasks like the typical social media browsing and video streaming, just the casual phone use, that's no problem here. 95% of the time, the phone felt fast and smooth with some slight frame drops in some areas, but not really a deal breaker considering this is an upper mid-range chip. There was this one weird thing I noticed, so after coming back to this phone, I updated all the apps to the latest version and used Facebook as any normal person would. And noticed that the app was so choppy, especially when scrolling. I tried restarting the phone, but it didn't fix my problem. What fixed the problem was reinstalling the app. I'm not sure what happened there, but I think it's worth sharing because a phone of this caliber shouldn't be having problems with casual apps like Facebook. So far, I have not encountered a single deal-breaking bug other than a weird choppy Facebook performance. But did I mention that this phone is still on Android 12? Other Xiaomi, Redmi, and Poco phones have been running Android 13 out of the box for quite some time now. But for some reason, Xiaomi has been struggling to keep this phone, their most expensive upper mid-range phone, up to date. Sure, it says MIUI Global 14 here, but I still see remnants of MIUI 13. For example, the double tap to sleep from the home screen is still not working regardless of the theme I'm using because apparently it only supports classic themes. The scheduled dark mode isn't working properly, so there's this toggle in the display setting where the text, icons, and wallpapers will adjust based on the mode you're on. Well, that doesn't work properly here. So I ended up turning the dark mode on and off every day manually. That's annoying. Since last month, I have only received the May security patch, which is always a good thing, but with Android 13, you're missing out on one neat feature, which is selective 120Hz for apps. So with the Poco F5, Poco added an option wherein you can set any app to 60 or 120Hz. There is one real bug I continue to experience so far. There's this instance where I had received an open notification and after several minutes, that same notification would pop up. We know all Xiaomi devices have issues with delayed notifications, but this is kinda taking it to the next level. But despite all of that, I wouldn't describe the software experience here as unusable or unbearable. MIUI is mostly good and reliable here, but it does come with quirks. So 2 months later, Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus. It's a very good big phone. 120 watts fast charging, 120Hz AMOLED display with Dolby Vision, it even has a headphone jack, solid battery, 200 megapixel with 4K 30 video and OIS, don't forget about that. It's still a solid buy even when you have the likes of Poco F5. but you really have to be mindful of that Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2 because it's a really impressive chipset. So that's it for this one. Drop a sub or like if you feel like supporting the channel. And as always, until the next one, stay safe.